Hey everyone, exams coming up, getting those pre-exam jitters. Well, today we're diving deep into exam stress.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of guides and articles here ready to help you feel confident and crush those exams.
We've got like student guides, articles all about exam stress and, coping mechanisms, that sort of thing.
Exactly. We're going to pull out all the best tips and insights from all this stuff.
So you can like totally own those exams. No more freaking out, all right.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of times we talk about stress like it's a bad thing,
Yes.
like the enemy or something.
Right, avoid at all costs.
But what if I told you a little stress can actually, be a good thing?
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Tell me
Ah.
more. Because I always thought stress was like, the heart racing, palms are sweating.
Well, it
Yeah.
can be, but imagine like an athlete, right? Training for like some big competition.
Mm-hmm.
If there were no stakes, no pressure, would they push themselves as hard?
Probably not, no.
Probably not. So that little edge of stress, it can actually be really motivating. It helps us focus, stay on track.
Right.
And actually, dealing with exam-pressure.pdf suggests that this kind of stress, it can actually help you unlock your best performance. The thing is, finding that balance.
So too much stress, that's where things go wrong.
Yeah. When the pressure's too much, it turns into anxiety. And then you see those classic signs like the racing heart, sweaty palms, that feeling like your brain just went blank. Dealing with exam-pressure.pdf, it actually breaks down these anxiety symptoms into 3 categories.
Okay, hit me with them. What are the categories?
All right, so we've got cognitive, affective, and physiological.
Okay, so cognitive, that's like the brain stuff, right? The thinking part.
Exactly.
Like when you totally blank on an answer that you studied, or like even worse, you remember it right when you walk out of the exam room.
Yes, it's your brain betraying you at the worst possible time.
The worst.
Then we've got affective symptoms. Those are about how we feel emotionally. Like, you might feel this overwhelming panic, out of control.
Right.
Or like, about to burst into tears kind of thing.
Right. And then, of course, there's the physical stuff, the physiological symptoms. So we're talking like the racing heart, dry mouth, maybe even feeling like your legs are going to give out.
Yeah, all of that. It's like your body's screaming, I'm freaking out.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. It's actually totally normal to experience some of these signs, especially during exam season. It's just your body responding to a challenge. It's the frequency and the intensity that you really have to watch out for. So if you're constantly feeling these things and it's like interfering with your daily life, it might be a sign you need a little extra support.
So what about managing those physical signs of stress?
Mm-hmm.
When your body's like totally freaking out. Any tips on how to calm down?
Well, dealing with exam-pressure.pdf actually has this surprisingly simple technique. Deep breathing.
Deep breathing.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it takes.
I know, right? Sounds almost too easy, but there's some serious science behind it.
Yeah.
When we take these slow, deep breaths, we're actually like hacking our nervous system, activating something called the parasympathetic nervous system. It's basically our body's chill out button.
So like hitting the brakes on the runaway stress train.
Yeah, exactly. It's like telling your brain that things are actually okay, which helps to slow down your heart rate and calm those physical symptoms. And like the best part, you can do it anywhere, anytime.
So while we're talking, I want everyone listening to just take a nice deep breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Feeling better already.
It's amazing how such a simple thing can have such a powerful effect.
It really is. Okay, so deep breathing is great for handling the physical side of things. But what about those pesky negative thoughts? Those I'm going to fail, I'm not good enough thoughts that always seem to pop up at the worst possible times.
Oh, yeah. Those are the worst. That negative self-talk, those thoughts, they can be incredibly powerful. And if we're not careful, they can actually become like self-fulfilling prophecies. Dealing with exam-pressure.pdf, they call these negative beliefs, and they can really sabotage your performance.
So how do we break free from that cycle of negativity? How do we stop those thoughts from spiraling out of control?
The key is to challenge those negative beliefs and then replace them with like positive, realistic ones. Shift your focus from what you fear to what you're actually capable of achieving.
So instead of thinking, I'm going to fail, you might say something like, hey, I've been studying hard, I'm going to do my best.
Exactly. And to make it even more powerful, try to connect those positive beliefs to specific actions. So instead of just saying, I'm going to do my best, you could say, I'm going to do my best by, Reviewing my notes every day and practicing past exam questions.
Right, so it's like you're setting yourself up for success, both mentally and, like, practically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But even with a positive mindset, sometimes that sheer volume of material, it can be super overwhelming. It's like you're drowning in information.
That's where a good revision plan comes in. Dealing with exam-pressure.pdf, it's a big advocate for creating a structured plan.
And it makes sense, right? Because when you have a plan, you break down that massive task of studying into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Exactly.
Like climbing a mountain, you know? You
Yeah.
just look at the summit and it's like, whoa, I can't do that. But if you focus on taking one step at a time, suddenly it feels doable.
Exactly. And a good plan, it's not just about what you're going to study, it's also about when you're going to study and how you're going to study. So setting realistic goals, scheduling study sessions, building in breaks, those are all key.
And there's something to be said for the psychological benefit of a plan, right? Like, it gives you a sense of control. Instead of feeling like you're at the mercy of this giant, scary exam, you're taking charge. You're in the driver's seat.
It's about empowering yourself to, own your learning.
Okay, so we've got our plan. We're feeling positive. We're breathing deeply. Now the big question. How do we actually revise effectively? What are some techniques that actually work? And thankfully, dealing with exam-pressure.pdf is full of them.
It's all about making revision active, personal, and practice-oriented. So it's not just passively reading stuff. It's about engaging with the material in a way that makes sense to you.
So let's get into it. The guide mentions things like summary cards, which seem like a really good way to condense information.
Yeah, those are good. And then there's mind maps. Those can help you visualize how different concepts are connected,
Right. And then for the visual learners out there, highlighting key points can really make those things stand out.
Yeah, for sure. And the guide also mentions using mnemonics, those memory aids that use rhymes or acronyms.
Oh, I love a good mnemonic. Like, remember that one for the planets? My very educated mother just served us noodles.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. It just shows you how, a little trick can make remembering things so much easier. The guide even gives this example from chemistry. Oil rig.
What's that one for?
Oxidation is loss of electrons and reduction is gain of electrons.
It's amazing how those quirky little things just stick in your brain.
They really do.
The guide also talks about rhymes, songs, even like putting Post-it notes around as visual prompts. It's all about making those connections, right?
Yeah. And here's a key point. There's no one right way to revise. What works for one person might not work for another. So it's about finding what clicks for you, what helps you really understand the material.
Totally. So you've found your revision groove, you're feeling good. Now it's time for self-testing. I know it can be scary, but dealing with exam-pressure.pdf really stresses how important it is to figure out what you know and what you need to work on.
Self-testing is like a superpower for your brain, forces you to actively retrieve information, which strengthens those neural connections, and that makes it much more likely you'll remember it on exam day.
Okay, so instead of just reading through your notes, try answering practice questions, writing out key concepts from memory, or even explaining the material to a friend.
Yeah, or make flashcards, create your own quizzes.
Even turn your notes into a game. It's about making it fun, right?
Exactly. Who wants to be miserable while they're studying?
Right, no one. Speaking of making things more enjoyable, what about self-care? We've got to talk about that. Both exam stress and -pressure-1.pdf and how to deal with examstress.pdf, they both really highlight how important it is to take care of yourself during this time.
It's true. We're talking about sleep, healthy eating, exercise.
It's so tempting to just pull all-nighters,
Yeah.
survive on coffee and pizza.
Yeah, I've been there. But honestly, that's a recipe for burnout.
It really is.
And our sources are super clear about this. Your physical well-being, it has a huge impact on how well your brain functions and how well you handle stress. So when you're sleep deprived, eating poorly, not moving your body, your brain just can't perform at its best.
Okay, listeners, time for a little self-reflection. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating good food? Are you moving your body? These things might seem like luxuries when you're under pressure, but they're actually essential for your brain to work properly.
And remember, self-care, it goes beyond just the physical. It's also about taking care of your mental and emotional well-being. So, taking breaks, doing things you enjoy, connecting with loved ones, all that's crucial for managing your stress.
Absolutely. Speaking of doing things you enjoy, let's talk about fun. Because guess what? Fun is not a four-letter word during exam season.
It's so important to remember that. Our brains need downtime, time to recharge and refocus.
Exam stress and pressure -1.pdf actually suggests scheduling short breaks for activities that you genuinely enjoy. So that could be like watching a funny video, listening to your favorite music, taking a walk in nature. The point is to give your brain a break from all that studying and allow yourself to relax and recharge.
And then when you go back to your studies, you're actually more focused, more productive.
It's like you've given your brain a little treat and it rewards you with better performance.
Exactly.
Win-win. But even with all of these great strategies, we've got to be realistic, right? Sometimes stress just becomes overwhelming, no matter how hard we try to manage it.
It's true. And that's where knowing when to seek extra support comes in. How to deal with exam stress.pdf actually has this list of signs that you might need to reach out for some help.
So we're talking about things like if you're having persistent feelings of anxiety or sadness, or you're having trouble concentrating or sleeping, changes in appetite, withdrawing from social activities. These are all signs you might need a little extra support. And there's no shame in that at all.
Not at all. In fact, recognizing when you need help and taking that step to reach out, it's actually a sign of strength.
It shows that you're committed to taking care of yourself.
Exactly. And how to deal with exam stress.pdf has a whole list of resources that can help, like counseling services, peer support groups, and even mental health hotlines. Remember, you're not alone, and there's help out there. Seeking help is a sign of courage, not weakness. It shows you're committed to your well-being. And, it's important to remember all this stuff we're talking about. These aren't just for exams,
Yeah.
These are skills, life skills, tools you can use to, deal with all kinds of challenges in life.
It's so true, like learning to manage stress, challenging negative thoughts, setting goals, taking care of yourself. Those are things that'll help you with everything.
Exactly. From
Yeah.
job interviews to giving presentations to, having those tough conversations that we all try to avoid.
Yeah, those.
So let's do a quick recap of what we've talked about so far. So first, we debunked that myth that all stress is bad.
Right.
Remember, a bit of pressure can actually be a good thing. It helps us focus, But it's about finding that balance before it tips over into anxiety.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then we talked about, recognizing those signs of exam anxiety.
Right, the cognitive, affective, and physiological stuff.
Yeah, and how important it is to reach out for help if things get to be too much.
Exactly. And then we explored some tools for managing that stress.
Like deep breathing.
Yeah, deep breathing, hitting that chill out button for your nervous system. And, of course, replacing those negative thoughts with positive ones.
And having a structured revision plan. It's all about breaking that mountain of material down into, manageable steps, right?
Exactly. And we can't forget self-care, fueling your body with good food, sleep, exercise. It's all connected. Now let's zoom in a bit on one specific technique for dealing with those negative thoughts that dealing with exam-pressure.pdf talks about.
Yeah.
Cognitive restructuring.
Cognitive restructuring. Okay. What's that?
Well, have you ever noticed how your mind, sometimes it just jumps to the worst case scenario?
All the time.
Yeah.
Like one bad grade on a practice test, and I'm suddenly convinced I'm going to fail the entire course.
Yeah. That's those automatic negative thoughts. Cognitive restructuring is about noticing those thought patterns and challenging them. Instead of just accepting them as the truth, we pause and ask ourselves, is this thought really accurate? What evidence do I have for this? Is there another way to look at this situation?
So it's like hitting the pause button on that negative spiral and choosing to reframe it in a more positive, more realistic way.
Exactly. And the more you practice this, the better you get at it. You're basically training your brain to be more resilient and focus on solutions rather than, getting stuck in the problem.
Love it. Rewiring our brains for positivity. Now, what about those subjects that just seem impossible to grasp? Any tips for those?
Dealing with exam-pressure.pdf has a really good tip for this one. Break it down. So instead of trying to understand a whole topic all at once, focus on mastering one concept at a time.
It's like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant?
Right. One bite at a time.
Exactly.
Makes it a lot less.
Oh, yeah. The teach to learn method.
It's amazing how teaching something really solidifies your understanding. And you might even realize there are gaps in your knowledge that you need to, go back and review.
Okay, good tip. Speaking of getting organized, what about your study environment? Dealing with exam-pressure.pdf recommends finding a quiet space, free from distractions.
It does, but it also suggests trying different study spots to see what works best for you.
Because some people, they need that desk and chair setup, Others might prefer something more relaxed, like a comfy chair or even studying outside. It's all about what helps you focus and absorb information best.
Right, and sometimes just a change of scenery can really boost your motivation.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about procrastination. We all do it, right? Putting things off until the last minute, even though we know it's not the best way to go. Any tips for overcoming that?
Procrastination. It's a tough one. Dealing with exam-pressure.pdf suggests starting by identifying your triggers, the things that pull you away from studying.
So like social media, maybe? That messy room that suddenly needs cleaning?
Yeah.
Or that pile of laundry you've been ignoring?
Yeah, exactly. Once you know what your weaknesses are, you can start to build strategies to avoid them.
So that might mean like setting limits on your screen time, having a dedicated study space, or even promising yourself a reward for staying focused.
Right. And don't forget that tip we mentioned earlier about breaking down large tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. It just makes everything feel less overwhelming. And you get that sense of accomplishment as you check things off your list.
And don't underestimate accountability. Tell a friend about your study goals.
It's like having a cheerleader in your corner.
Exactly. Speaking of success, let's talk about the day of the exam. Those final hours can be nerve-wracking, so it's good to have a plan. What does dealing with exam-pressure.pdf say about those last few moments?
Well, first and foremost, sleep. Don't pull an all-nighter.
Been there, done that. Not a good idea.
Nope. Get a good night's sleep the night before the exam and in the morning. Eat a good breakfast, something that'll give you energy, not make you feel sluggish.
And here's a tip that might sound a little counterintuitive. Avoid cramming at the last minute.
Yeah, it's just going to increase your anxiety, not your knowledge.
So instead, maybe review key concepts, go over your notes, maybe do some light practice questions.
Yeah. It's about reinforcing what you already know, not cramming in new stuff.
And don't forget to pack everything you need the night before. Pens, pencils, calculator, ID, anything that'll help you feel prepared and confident.
It makes such a difference when you walk into that exam room feeling organized and ready to go.
Oh, I used to have a checklist taped to my door, just so I wouldn't forget anything crucial. Another thing I used to do is plan my route to the exam venue in advance so I wouldn't be like rushing or stressed about being late.
That's such a good idea. Nobody needs that extra stress right before an exam. Okay, so you've planned ahead, you've got your supplies, you've had a good night's sleep. What about once you're actually in the exam room? That test paper is staring you in the face.
Okay, now the real test begins. What does dealing with exam-pressure.pdf say about actually taking the exam?
First things first, read the instructions carefully. You'd be surprised how many students make silly mistakes just because they didn't take the time to read the instructions properly.
Okay, so read those instructions. Make sure you understand exactly what they're asking before you start writing.
Exactly. And then take a few minutes to skim through the whole exam paper, get a sense of like the types of questions, how many points each section is worth, the overall structure. It'll help you plan your time.
So it's like having a roadmap, right?
Exactly. And here's a really important tip. Don't get stuck on a question if you're struggling. Just move on and come back to it later.
It's all about managing your time and using your strengths.
Right. And even if you don't know every answer, don't panic. Just do your best.
Yeah.
Try to pick up as many points as you can.
Yeah, and take breaks if you need them. Get up and stretch, take some deep breaths, close your eyes for a minute, hit that reset button for your brain.
And stay hydrated. Bring a water bottle with you to the exam. Dehydration can really make you tired and foggy.
Ugh, yeah. And here's a big one. When you're done, resist the urge to compare answers with everyone else.
It just makes you anxious and second-guess yourself.
It's so tempting, though, right?
It is, but it's not helpful. Trust in your preparation. Trust in yourself.
Okay, I like that. You've done the work. Now it's time to let go and celebrate.
Exactly. And speaking of celebrating, remember that your worth is not defined by your exam results.
So true.
Exams, they're just one tiny measure of your abilities. They don't show the whole picture of who you are and what you can do.
So be kind to yourself no matter what happens.
Celebrate your effort, learn from the experience, and just keep moving forward.
It really is. Exams are just one chapter, right?
Exactly. And speaking of chapters, exam stress and bad pressure-1.pdf remind us that it's not just about, like, acing the test.
Yeah, it's about what you learn along the way, right?
It's about the growth, the resilience, the problem-solving skills you develop. That stuff sticks with you.
You know, it's also important to celebrate those wins, even the small ones.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, did you finally get that concept you've been struggling with?
Yeah.
High five.
Or, like, you stuck to your study plan all week. That's amazing. Celebrate that.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging those efforts. recognizing that progress. And hey, even if things don't go exactly how you planned, even if you don't get the grade you were hoping for, it's not the end of the world.
It's not. Life is full of ups and downs, setbacks. They're just part of the journey. The important thing is how we respond to them.
So much wisdom. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I have a question for you. We've been talking about exam stress, but how can you apply these strategies to other stressful situations? The deep breathing, the positive self-talk, the self-care, all that.
That's such a great question because, honestly, life is full of stressful situations, right?
Exactly. Exams are just one example.
Right. What about, like, job interviews, public speaking, having those, like, awkward conversations?
Ugh, yeah, those are the worst.
Right. These tools can help you with all of that. So as you're going through life's ups and downs, remember what we talked about today. These skills can help you thrive.
You got this. We believe in you. You have the strength to overcome any challenge that comes your way.
We're rooting for you.
We are. All right, that's it for this deep dive.
Until next time, everyone, happy diving.